All right, what's this? Hamtramck? Oh gosh, why do names have to be so confusing? Hamtramck? Hamtramck. Hamtramck, Michigan is where we are for this video. Hamtramck. Hamtramck, Michigan. Great sunset, by the way. Oh my, is that a great sunset. After taking part in some hijinks and hilarity in the hood, I began the video at the historic Hamtramck Stadium, which actually looks a lot different right now than it did back when I filmed this video, as renovations began later in 2021. What makes Hamtramck Stadium historic is that it's one of only 5 Negro League home ballparks that are still in existence. The Negro Leagues were made up of professional baseball teams that were set up for Black Americans, with the first ones being set up around 1920. The Negro Leagues existed because they weren't welcome in the major leagues until around 1947. Anyway, Hamtramck Stadium was designated as a historic national landmark back in 2012. In 2021, Wayne County approved an $850,000 grant to help renovate the facility. The Detroit Tigers have helped fund an additional $2.6 million, and soon, this stadium will hopefully look beautiful for years to come. Additional facts to Hamtramck Stadium is that construction began in 1929 on land that used to be a yard for the Detroit Lumber Company. The stadium stopped being used as the home field for a Negro League team back in 1937, and the city of Hamtramck has owned the stadium since 1940. And for a long time it was used as a recreational field for the community, while also hosting events for youth sports leagues throughout the years. Over the years, the population of Hamtramck and the surrounding community of Detroit experienced sharp declines, resulting in lower usage of the field. In the 1980s, the nearby high schools of Dodge, Maine, and Catholic closed, and the usage of the stadium declined even further following the school closings. In the 1990s, parts of the stadium were deemed to be unsafe and were blocked off to the public, and the stadium hasn't been used at all since 2012, the same year that it became a National Historic Landmark. But again, that should change following the renovations that are currently happening at the stadium. Meanwhile, this will be my 10th video in my Detroit series where I go through the entire city. This video will focus on the Detroit neighborhood of Hamtramck.
You're obviously not from here. Everybody knows that Hamtramck is its own city, separate from Detroit. You're a joke.
Yeah, I was just seeing if you were paying attention. I stole that trick from World According to Briggs, great YouTube channel. Well, anyway, Hamtramck is what many people describe as an enclave within the city limits of Detroit, as it's surrounded by the Detroit city limits on all sides. It's a really culturally significant place, however, and we'll get into more of why that is throughout the rest of this video. Really quick though, as if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, as doing all of those things helps these videos destroy the evil monster that is the YouTube algorithm. Also make sure to hit that notification bell so that you can be notified every time that I upload a new video. If you enjoyed this video, then you might enjoy checking out some of the featured playlists on this channel. Videos with amazing insights on other places like what you'll see here can be found in my Detroit playlist, my American Hoods playlist, or in my Michigan playlist. Last but not least, if you can't get enough of me on here, you can always go follow me on my other social media accounts, and those links are below. Alright, so now it's time to profile the city of Hamtramck. It's literally a city that's surrounded by the city limits of Detroit. A very small part of it borders Highland Park, which is another city that sits entirely within the Detroit city limits. The city is named after Jean-Francois Hamtramck, who was a French-Canadian soldier that fought in the Revolutionary War and was a commander at the nearby Fort Shelby, which was located where downtown Detroit sits today. The community was organized all the way back in 1796, but it wasn't incorporated as a village until 1901, which is around the time that Detroit started to grow rapidly. Originally, Hamtramck was a settlement of German farmers, but that farmland was taken up by the housing that you see here today pretty quickly. as Polish immigrants soon flooded the city limits to work at the auto plants, most notably the Dodge plant that opened in 1914. From 1910 to 1920, the city of Hamtramck grew from a population of only 3,500 to about 46,000. Once again, most of these were Polish immigrants, and we'll talk more about the Polish history of the city later in the video. And even though today you don't see as high of a concentration of Polish residents like you used to in Hamtramck, you can still see the cultural significance of the Polish immigrants that once made up the city by just looking at the storefronts. However, in 1922, Hamtramck was incorporated as a city to keep it from being annexed by Big Bad Detroit. That was a common political move at the time by many municipalities and urban areas across the United States, as these smaller entities tried to stay independent from the nearby larger cities. As you can see here though, after 1930, people started to leave Hamtramck. The place was probably just too crowded, to be honest. Detroit's decline didn't start until the 1950s and 60s. Once Detroit started to spiral downwards, Hamtramck followed suit. Crime rates in Hamtramck raised alongside the crime rates in Detroit, and the once large Polish community that lived here moved north towards the suburbs of Sterling Heights and Warren. And today, you can find people with family trees tied to Hamtramck all throughout Detroit's suburbs. In fact, today, Metro Detroit still has the third largest Polish-American immigrant group in the country after the New York and Chicago metro areas. The only thing now is that here in Detroit, they're not all settled in one community like they used to be or like they are in New York and Chicago. Rather, they're just spread throughout the metro area now. It didn't help that the Dodge plant that helped Hamtramck grow closed back in 1980. That historic plant was demolished a year after closing. It was replaced, though, by a larger GM plant on the south part of town, which we'll go by later in the video. The construction of the GM plant required demolition of nearly all of Detroit's historic Poletown neighborhood, which I talked about in my last video that I uploaded in my Detroit series. I think mostly people were just moving out of Hamtramck for mostly the same reason that people moved out of Detroit, as the suburbs just offered a better quality of life, especially the ones to the north and northwest. Bringing back the population history of Hamtramck, you can see that the population decline of Hamtramck has stopped, as it says that a 25% increase in residents occurred in the 2000-year census, followed by a 2% drop, only to see yet another 27% gain for the 2020 census. So it seems as if Hamtramck hit rock bottom back in 1990. Today, the city is predominantly Muslim. It's actually the only city in the country that has an all-Muslim local government. We already talked about the abundance of Polish Americans in the Metro Detroit area. Middle Easterners have long been moving to the Metro Detroit area as well, with the Detroit suburb of Dearborn being the traditional anchor for that ethnicity. In Hamtramck, most of the Middle Easterners come from Yemen. Other immigrant groups make up the population of Hamtramck, as well as there's a good portion of people here from Bangladesh. It's said that up to 28 different languages are spoken among the students within Hamtramck's public schools, but the majority immigrant group here is definitely Arab Americans. We're now in the far northwestern portion of the city, as to the right is the city limits of Detroit. Anyway, on paper, the economic stats among the residents doesn't necessarily measure up to be all that great. The median household income in Hamtramck is only $27,000 per year, according to the official U.S. Census website, with only 12% of residents 25 and older holding a bachelor's degree or higher. The median value of owner-occupied housing units is under $70,000, and the poverty rate is 46.5%, which means that basically half of the city's residents lives in poverty. Niche.com gives the public schools a C, so those could be better. But when it comes to crime, it's obvious that there's some real hood stuff that goes on here, as the violent crime rate in Hamtramck is concerning, over 800 for every 100,000 residents, whereas the reported property crime rate, not so much. When looking at that stat, I feel like there's been a lot of unreported property crimes, but maybe I'm wrong. On the bright side, in 2019, only one homicide was reported. Obviously, we all agree that that number is better at 0, but for an inner city hood like what Hamtramck basically is, that's not that bad, especially when you measure it up to Detroit. Most of the violent crime that occurs in Hamtramck comes in the form of assault and robbery. Better watch your backs, people. Don't tick off the wrong guy. In fact, this is a large Section 8 public housing community located on the far western side of town. I-75 separates this part of Hamtramck from the core of town that we just drove through. This community is ran by the Hamtramck Housing Commission. Well, now it's time to head back towards the city, and I do just that. To the left up ahead is one of the more historic churches in Hamtramck, and it's the St. Florian Catholic Church. The church was built in 1908, and it was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1984. Historically, the church has consisted of Polish members, and ironically, the address for the church is off of Poland Street. To the left, you have, it looks like, some city offices, and you also have a medical center back here. But for the next couple of minutes, we're going to go through the area of the city that seemingly has the highest concentration of vacant lots. I'm not saying it's abandoned, I'm saying that it has the highest concentration of vacant lots in the entire city. I mean, Hamtramck used to have over 50,000 people, and today it has only 28,000. So you're going to have some vacant lots potentially in the city, and this part of the town that I'm about to drive through, once again, seems to have the most of it. When looking at a map, it makes sense that this part of town would be rougher because it sits right by some railroad tracks and it sits by some pretty large industrial areas. Well, here I turn right and go underneath this railroad overpass, and straight ahead is the massive General Motors Hamtramck plant, which was constructed here back in the 1980s. The construction of the plant, however, was controversial, as it destroyed what used to be Detroit's Pole Town neighborhood. The plant is so massive that it forced nearly 4,200 people to move, which in the U.S. is the largest number of people moved through eminent domain in the shortest amount of time. General Motors promised at the time to provide over 6,000 jobs through the new plant, but GM only provided half of the original promised amount. Even though this plant is named the Hamtramck plant, and half of it is in the city of Hamtramck, while the other half is in the city of Detroit, it was a deal that was done between General Motors and the city of Detroit. Well, let's talk about some of the events that go on in Hamtramck, because there's quite a few of them that are pretty popular. As you know by now, Hamtramck historically is a Polish community. There might not be a large amount of Polish living here anymore, but the city really does like to celebrate its Polish culture. Every year on Fat Tuesday, people from all over Metro Detroit flock to Hamtramck to get a popular Polish pastry treat. The name of this treat is the cause for much confusion and debate, and I'll do my best to explain. The pastry treat that people flock to Hamtramck every year to come get is called a pączek, which is the singular name for the plural version of the word pączki, or punchki, or panczki. I mean, most people pronounce it in different ways. Most Polish people that I've heard pronounce the word say pączki, so that's how I'm going to roll with it. But it's a pastry treat that originated from Poland, and it's so popular here that Fat Tuesday is actually referred to as Pączki Day by many people here in the Detroit area. Traditionally, Fat Tuesday was put in place for Catholics, as it's basically their last day that they can load up on carbs and sweets and fats before taking part in Lent, and a large amount of Polish people are Catholics. Along with that, Hamtramck puts on the Pączki Run 5K on the Saturday before Pączki Day every year. Other events in Hamtramck that are popular includes the Hamtramck Music Festival, which is held on the first weekend in March. The Hamtramck Labor Day Festival is another one that celebrates the city's Polish heritage, as it includes a Polish Day parade. It's definitely the biggest Labor Day event in the Detroit area. But you don't really need to wait until any of these festivals take place to experience any kind of Polish food if that's what you're wanting. There's plenty of Polish restaurants in the city. With the majority of the population shifting from Polish to Middle Eastern over the years, you also have a nice collection of Middle Eastern restaurants to choose from, and other ethnicities as well. It's not just Polish and Middle Eastern. That's what attracts people to Hamtramck, is its cultural diversity and for the fact that it still has its original urban neighborhood feel. Other ethnic groups with a strong presence in Hamtramck includes Bangladeshi and Ukrainian, and you can find restaurants tied to those cultures here in Hamtramck as well. During the city's music festival, you can hear music from Bangladesh, including music from all over the world. Hamtramck truly is Detroit's melting pot. So I met a friend here, Lynn Blasey, who lives here in Hamtramck, and she's actually ran for city council here in Hamtramck. What's your experience been like living in Hamtramck?
I moved here in 2012, and I have a degree in Middle Eastern history and do a lot of community work. So when I moved here, I felt right at home, and quickly told my partner at the time that I was never leaving.
Well, there you go. Yeah, if you specialize in Middle Eastern history.
Yeah.
I just did some research earlier. The Metro Detroit area has more Middle Easterners than any other metro area in the country.
Right.
Did you know that before you moved here?
Yes.
Yes.
My first job out of college was in the education department at the Arab American National Museum.
Oh, very nice.
So I actually taught that to a ton of thousands of people the years I worked there.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So this place is definitely for you.
Yeah.
So you've lived here since 2012 and you love this place. Tell me some things that you love about this place. Is it the food scene? Is it the urban neighborhood? What is it?
I love the cultural diversity. I love that a lot of very different people from different backgrounds and cultures live so harmoniously next door to each other. The food scene is amazing. If you walk around Hamtramck, you can smell food from all over the world. You can hear music from all over the world. You can go to, we have a couple of really great museums. We have the Hamtramck History Museum. We have a Ukrainian History Museum, which is relevant especially now. One thing that was really special to me is from living in Egypt, I heard the call to prayer a lot, and I hadn't heard that until I moved to Hamtramck.
Oh, wow.
And it makes me feel comfortable and, makes my heart happy. So.
Well, that's very cool. There's not too many places like this, especially in Michigan, let alone the Midwest. You have cultural communities in Chicago. Now, this is Detroit, obviously, and a lot of people, when they think of Detroit, they think of high crime rates. What can you say about the crime rates here in Hamtramck?
One thing I really love about living here is that we have our own police and we have our own fire, which means that response times are really quick. If you call the police in Hamtramck, there's 2 squad cars there within minutes. And, if it's something that's really life or death, that response time is really important. So I really value that we have our, police and our own police and fire right here in our 2.5 square mile city.
We're actually passing the City Hall to the right, which sits right across from a nice little park to the left. But yes, as you heard, Hamtramck is the place to be in Detroit if you're wanting to experience other cultures. From this, I wanted to transition to one of the more popular sites to see in Hamtramck, which is Hamtramck Disneyland. It's in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and you can see it through a back alley.
And just like that, here it is. The guy who built this lived from 1920 to 2015, and he grew up in the Ukraine.
The Ukrainian American Archives and Museum is located off of Joseph Combo between Norwalk and Edwin Street. In it, you'll find anything that you'd want about Ukrainian American culture. To the left is Hamtramck High School, home to the Cosmos. Enrollment is about 1,000. Now, I've said many of the positive things about Hamtramck, but it's hard to ignore that there are plenty of negatives about the city as well. Nearly all students at Hamtramck High School are eligible for free or reduced lunches. Remember that Hamtramck has a poverty rate of 46.5%, according to the official U.S. Census website, and that means that nearly half of all Hamtramck residents are living under the poverty line. Some publications say that Hamtramck is the poorest city in all of Michigan, but official data shows that Highland Park experiences lower income numbers, so that ain't true. But it's pretty darn close. To explain things even further, the median household income numbers in Hamtramck are worse than Detroit's, and Detroit has a lower poverty rate than Hamtramck does. Another concerning factor for Hamtramck that is pretty hard to ignore is the aging infrastructure, including the lead water lines. Test results from 2021 showed elevated levels of toxic lead within the drinking water. No, that's not just a Michigan thing, by the way, it's an American thing. Go ahead and do a search for Newark, New Jersey. Anyway, America is getting better at replacing their older lead water lines. Usually you can still find them in dense urban older cities such as Hamtramck, especially ones that are made up of poor residents. Not only are many of the public service lines needing to be replaced, but so are many of the pipes within the individual homes and buildings. Well, that's about it for this video, and if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and make sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, as doing all of those things helps these videos destroy the evil monster that is the YouTube algorithm. Also make sure to hit that notification bell so that you can be notified every time that I upload a new video. If you enjoyed this video, then you might enjoy checking out some of the featured playlists on this channel. Videos with amazing insights on other places like what you saw here can be found in my Detroit playlist, my Michigan playlist, or in my American Hoods playlist. Last but not least, if you can't get enough of me on here, you can always go follow me on my other social media accounts, and those links are below. We'll see you next time. Peace.